In this video, we're going to talk about the 4 drivers of retention and engagement. I think you'll agree with me that retention and engagement are some of the biggest problems that leaders face today. As a result of the Great Resignation, nearly 4 million people per month left their jobs over the last few years. And Gallup reports that 85% of people are disengaged or highly disengaged at work. So that means at best, they're coming to work and they don't care. Or if they're highly disengaged, they're coming to work and they're trying to sabotage what your company is doing. Now, this low retention and engagement is going to have huge consequences for you as a leader. First, you're going to experience diminished capacity. You're going to have too much to do and not enough time. A second consequence is sideways energy. You will spend so much energy trying to deal with problems and put out fires that you can't focus on what's most important. The third consequence is that you can't move the company forward in its biggest goals. As you lose people and as they become disengaged, they will do less of the really important work that drives you toward your goals. And finally, your company is going to experience financial loss when you have low retention and engagement. In fact, it's estimated that it takes 6 to 9 months of an employee's salary to replace them when they leave. So retention and engagement has huge consequences for you as a leader. And as you lose people and as people disengage, what you're going to find is that there is a cycle to this. The more people who quit, the more work gets distributed to the remaining people. Of course, this makes sense. But those remaining people have more work to do. And so they become stressed, overwhelmed, and they become disengaged because they have so much to do. As disengagement and low retention increase, this leads your employees to believing that the culture of your company is toxic. And that perception of a toxic culture will lead more people to quit, fewer people to apply. And of course, then it goes back up to the top. The more people who quit, the more that work gets distributed and the cycle keeps going. This has huge consequences for your company if you have low retention and engagement. But there are also personal consequences for you, not as a leader, not as an employee or a business owner, but as a human being. The more you experience this retention and engagement problems, the more you are going to deal with stress, worry, anxiety, and fear. Over the last few months, I've talked to multiple leaders who say that they feel like a failure because they can't keep great people. And this makes them second guess their role, their position, their leadership. The third is that it becomes harder to engage in life outside of work because your work keeps you so consumed. And finally, you're going to feel like you're beating your head up against a brick wall, trying to figure out what's driving people away. You can't even pay attention when you're away from work because you're thinking so much about this problem. Over the years, what I've noticed is that when leaders begin to feel this way, they make several big mistakes. The first mistake is simply trying to figure out why people are leaving. They start using engagement surveys or exit interviews, trying to figure out why droves of people are leaving. And by this point, you might be able to figure out a few things, but it is not helping you. You are delaying the inevitable when this happens. The second mistake that leaders make is they try to increase the base pay and benefits. Now, don't get me wrong. This is wonderful to pay people more. It's wonderful to give them better benefits. But at the end of the day, as you pay people more and as you give them better benefits, if that's what's keeping them at your company, the first time a better offer comes around, they will leave. So pay and benefits aren't the secret to retention and engagement. The third mistake that I see leaders make is they put their head down, they put their head in the sand, and they just hope that the problem is going to go away. It's not. And that is never a solution to a challenge like this. And finally, and this is the big one, leaders make the mistake of thinking that retention and engagement are the actual issues. Now, listen, this part is a little strange, but retention and engagement are the lag measures of the problems that you're having. They indicate that a problem is there, but they aren't the actual problems. In fact, there are 4 drivers of retention and engagement. And so when you get these right, retention and engagement gets significantly better. The first driver of retention and engagement is clarity. Clarity happens when everyone in your organization knows where we're going, how we're getting there, what their role is in getting there, and why it's important to get there in the first place. People want to be part of something great. In fact, humans want this so badly that we don't even need to be paid to be part of something great. Think about the civil rights movement. People were not paid to be part of it, and yet they volunteered for it. If you don't help your people understand that what they're doing is important, if they don't understand where you're going, how you're getting there, what their role is in getting there, and why it's important, then it will drive them to disengagement because the hard work that they're doing isn't rooted in something great that they're doing. So create clarity for your team. The second driver of retention and engagement is community. Community is the trust that your team has both in you and in each other. When we talked about clarity just a second ago, I told you that people want to be part of something great, but they also want to be part of something together with others. As a leader, you're responsible to not only build trust with your direct reports and vendors, but you're also responsible to facilitate an environment where everyone can trust each other. If you as a leader don't facilitate community, it is going to diminish your retention and engagement. Why? Because people don't want to work with others that they don't trust. They'll feel like they have to act political or make sure they don't say anything wrong. And in that type of environment, people will act in their own best interest rather than in the interest of the group. So that's the second driver, is community. Now, if you have clarity and community, it's going to be much easier to have the third driver, which is culture. A healthy culture happens when your company's values and beliefs match up with the expected behaviors and habits and norms within a company. A lot of times, companies say that they value people, but then they treat them terribly, or they say they value customer service, but then they allow poor customer service to be the norm. Culture happens, and a healthy culture happens when your values and beliefs as a company match up with the expected behaviors, habits, and norms in a company. And the reality is, people want to work in a company and in a culture that aligns with their own values and beliefs. So every company has a culture, but you as a leader are responsible to intentionally create the culture that aligns your values and beliefs with those behaviors. See, when leaders don't intentionally create a healthy culture, they unintentionally create an unhealthy or even toxic culture. And the reality is that most companies are unintentional in the culture they want to create. So the fourth driver of retention and engagement is culture, where people know what to expect when it comes to the beliefs and behaviors and habits and norms. The fourth driver of retention and engagement is leadership development. Leaders are responsible to develop their own leadership abilities and to develop more leaders and better leaders. When leaders fail to grow themselves, when they fail to grow others around them, it causes low retention and engagement. Now, how do I know this? Well, let's look at a couple of stats here. Let's look at one about engagement. 71% of employees surveyed do not feel that their current leaders will be able to carry them into the future. They're looking at the leaders and they're saying these leaders don't have what it takes to take us into the future. And so they're disengaged. Here's another one for you. 51% of people who leave a company say that they leave because of their boss. So we can see that leaders who aren't developing themselves and growing and becoming better leaders are the primary cause of low retention. Leadership development is the fourth driver of retention and engagement. Leadership development is the foundational driver of the other three drivers. Clarity, community, and culture are only possible when you're developing the quality and the quantity of leaders in your organization. So if you really want to drive retention and engagement, you must develop your own leadership and you must develop the leaders around you. The foundational problem, remember how I said that retention and engagement aren't the actual issues? The actual issue is that you don't have the quality of leaders and the quantity of leaders you need. Now, if you'd like to learn more about how advanced leadership can help your company increase engagement and retention and develop those leaders that you so desperately need, all you got to do is click the button below. You're going to answer a few questions, and then you'll be able to book a strategy call.